Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be discussing the philosophical current named scientificism, mainly stated by Thomas Kuhn. For this, we're going to cover a couple of slides on a presentation that I've prepared for all of you, and we're also going to watch a video. If you have any comments, please make sure to watch the video and comment during in my YouTube channel, or you can also contact me um, with my personal email. Let's start with today's presentation. Okay, so as I was telling you, today I'm going to talk to you about scientificism, whose main representative is Thomas Kuhn. Thomas Kuhn is a philosopher and also a scientist, born in 1922 and died in 1996. As you can see with this, Thomas Kuhn is a quite contemporary philosopher. He was one of the most influential philosophers of science during the 20th century, and he actually installed a new way on how to interpret philosophy of science. The main idea for him was to see science in a whole different way. He studied as his major physics in Harvard, and then switched to history of science. And after he switched to history of science, started developing philosophy of science. His work was so good that he was elected as a member of Society of Fellows in Harvard. This is for you to know that philosophy keeps on evolving, and philosophy keeps on presenting new ideas and ways to interpret itself and to interpret reality. That is why today we're going to watch study this philosopher that is quite contemporary to what we know nowadays. Okay, so I'm going to present to all of you now his theory. First, let's define what is scientificism. Scientificism, as the slide says, is the philosophical attitude that primes the scientific methodology as a way to approach to knowledge. This means that scientificism is going to say or going to state that through science is the only way, or science is the only way we can use in order to achieve knowledge, or is maybe if it's not the only way, it's the better way to achieve knowledge. For instance, in scientificism, they are going to say that everything that can be proved by science is going to be a knowledge, and that if there is something that we cannot know by science right now, it's just because we need to develop science more to expand the scope so that we can get to know the whole world and the whole reality. For instance, something that scientificism is going to state is that there is no chance, that there is nothing that science cannot get to know. They're going to say that there is no limit for human knowledge. Hence, the possibility of clonating nowadays uh, living beings, and hence the possibility of now traveling outside Earth, and hence the many possibilities that science has given to us right now. Okay, so this is just for you to have this general framework of what is scientificism. And now let's go to what Thomas Kuhn is actually proposing. He wrote a book that is named The Scientific Revolutions in 1962. And in this book, he's going to present all his theory on how science is constantly changing and evolving. He's going to think that the changes in science follow some sort of pattern, so some sort of method. And this method is cyclical. It's going to be repeating constantly. And it's going to pass through four main steps. These four main steps, we're going to see them in a couple of minutes. But what he's stating over here is that he thinks that science is constantly changing. He says that with this new philosophy of science, the main problem is that we need to find a way to understand how is science changing, and how, if science is changing, then knowledge is changing as well. So the main idea here is that what he wants to do, what Thomas Kuhn wants to do, is to explain how these changes happen, and then how we can use these changes in science to understand a new way on how to interpret reality. So he's going to propound these four steps. On the first step, we have a paradigm. The second step is an anomaly. The third step is a crisis, and the fourth step is a new paradigm. So let's go through each one of these, and then we can follow along with one particular example. Okay. So when talking about a paradigm, A paradigm can be defined as a set of beliefs that is shared by a group, meaning with this that a whole community or a whole society believes that something happens in one particular way. The research on specific topics here is really, really solid. And during this paradigm, what we have is the development of normal science. uh, Knowledge over here is thought to be cumulative, to be constantly evolving, and to be constantly adding new ideas. During this paradigm, what happens is that if there are things that a particular scope or a particular view cannot understand, what the paradigm does is to expand its horizons, to make more inquiries, to make more hypotheses, and even more experiments on how to change the way to, or how to interpret that phenomena that is not being understood since the beginning. Later on, what happens when we have this paradigm is that there are some anomalies that cannot be explained by the predominant paradigm. What happens over here, what Kuhn says, is that this is the starting point for a scientific revolution. What happens here at first is that the scientists increase the scope and accuracy of the predominant paradigm so that the predominant paradigm is able to solve these anomalies that are presented to the way they are interpreting the world. What happens over here during the paradigm and the anomaly is that the predominant paradigm is accepted without questioning. It's like some sort of absolute truth. So if we were to take this as an example during a paradigm, let's think historically, there was a long time, a period in history that people believed that the earth was flat, and there were a lot of cumulative progress and a lot of theories trying to explain or sustaining the fact that the earth was flat. There were some anomalies. There were obviously some things that this theory was not able to explain. For instance, why was it that when we were at shore and we would see the boats over there in the horizon, we would see that at some point the boats faded. That nowadays we would think that that is precisely that is precisely representing the roundness of the earth. However, uh, later on in time, what happened is that uh, more theories, more anomalies were presented up until the point when there was a crisis. When there was this crisis, there were many anomalies that the predominant paradigm was not able to sustain. During the crisis, there is a lot of different information that the scientists cannot fully envelope with the predominant paradigm. What happens over here is that scientists start seeing new, different things. Obviously, here we have to take into account that what a scientist, or for what it matters, a human being sees, depends on what is being seen and the previous experience I have. For instance, if you were to see nowadays, if you were to see today the sunset, you would see that the sun is coming from one part of the world, and then when during the sunrise, the sun is coming out, and during the sunset, the sun is coming down. It's going down. If you were to see that today, and I would ask you to explain this phenomena, you would tell me that the sun is fixated and that the earth is constantly rotating. But if we were to ask this same question to a person that was living back in ancient Greece, they would tell us that the earth was fixated and that the sun was moving around the earth. With this, what I would like you to see is that it is the humankind is the individual or the scientist that has a particular scope, and with that scope is interpreting reality. What happens during a crisis is that there is a new way to understand reality, and scientists start to see they start to see this new way of understanding reality. What happens over here during the crisis time is that the ancient paradigm is facing a new paradigm, and there is some sort of a struggle between these two. If the ancient paradigm wins, then we go back to the set of the paradigm and the anomaly. But if the new paradigm wins this fight, then a new paradigm arises, and then what happens is that we scratch the whole previous progress, and we start to think that the new paradigm is the one that is actually um, ruling the new way of understanding the world. This is actually what happens later on. This is the fourth step for Thomas Kuhn. So we have a predominant paradigm, then we have the anomalies, then we have the crisis, and then we have the new paradigm. What happens over here is that we have like a cycle that is constantly moving from one to another. Maybe the cycles won't happen in a 20 years time period. Maybe they will take centuries or even millennia to change. Just try to think about how we would think the earth was flat back in the medieval times and how now we know that it is roundish. Okay, so this is just for you to know these main ideas. So what I would like you to do now is to go to my YouTube channel and find this video, an introduction to Thomas Kuhn, the structure of scientific revolutions, and please watch it. The video is going to help you to better understand these four steps for Thomas Kuhn, and that will be all for today. Hope this video is has helped you to understand what Thomas Kuhn is doing. When you finish this video, I would like you to comment in case you have any particular questions, or please contact me if you need extra information. See you on Friday.